Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of the Mormon Atheist. Today is November 6th, 2025, and welcome everybody, welcome Apostate Congregation. Uh, Today we are going to be doing the long-awaited final episode of Martin Harris's interview with Joel Tiffany. Um, This has been such a long-awaited episode. It's been like 8 months since I did the part two. So this will be part three, the final episode of the Joel Tiffany and Martin Harris interview. Okay, apostates. Like always on this channel, we go back in time. Okay, thank you for tuning in to the Mormon Atheist. We are going to turn on to some Joel Tiffany right now. Okay, and we're gonna, go back in time, take a walk through history, and drop out of society for a little while, all right? So, congregation, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are not monetized. You know the routine. The only way to help the Mormon atheist is to like and subscribe and to share the videos, watch them all the way through, etc., etc. Okay, let's go. Let's get into this. Joel Tiffany. Okay, so we're going to kind of recap one and two. Okay, so Joel Tiffany is approaching this entire interview from a 1850s uh, scientifical perspective, right? But his science approach is in the supernatural. Okay, so he's interested in the supernatural aspects. Now you have to remember, apostates, this is the 1800s. There are not words that we use today. Okay, so these things are just they're considered to be part of the occult. So Joel Tiffany in Mormon history is considered to be an occultist, and his story is one of those passing mention stories, right? So how I first got interested in Joel Tiffany was there's a story about Joel Tiffany taking the character page to Charles Anton. Okay, so in the process of that story, Joel Tiffany is one of the people that Martin Harris comes across in that story, but it's just a very brief mention. It's like a one sentence type of mention, right? And so if you look him up in LDS archives, the only thing that is really said about him is he's an occultist, and that like flat out that's it. There's nothing about any writings. There's nothing. So Joel Tiffany is one of those characters that the church is forced to recognize, but can't completely whitewash. You know what I'm saying? So just like Charles Anton, just like Leroy Sunderland, there's multiple of these people in Mormon history that are just one-line mentions. You know, Eli Bruce, Lodom Lawson. You know, these kinds of people are just one-liners in Mormon history, but they can't be fully erased because there's other stuff out there that mentions these names. All right. Follow me on this, apostates. Okay. So Joel Tiffany is coming at it from a scientist's perspective. All right. So the name of his article, it's an article and it's in a magazine. It's called Tiffany's Monthly, volume number five. Well, volume five, number four, August 1859. Okay. Now dates are important here. August 1859. Okay. The reason why dates are so important is because the dates play a role in this entire narrative. Think of the dates almost as a character all in themselves, right? They're kind of the referee here, if you will, right? Are these dates, okay? When you're navigating through the turbulent waters of Mormon history in your submarine. Jeez. That's the Book of Ether. That's a Book of Ether reference right there. Okay, anyways, let's keep going, apostate. So section 1 sets the stage, right? This article you can go to. I'm going to throw you for a loop here, apostates. The name of this, the only, like, hands down, the only place I could find this was a website called olivercowdery.com. Okay. Now, the thing with this website, olivercowdery.com, is there's a lot of different stuff on that website. It's not a Mormon, it's not an LDS affiliated website, okay? It's classed as a neutral website. Like, I've done a lot of research on this website, okay, and I'm kind of up in the air about this website, but nonetheless, this is literally the only place I could find this article was on this website. And according to the research that I've done, it's in its entirety, it's in its full. There's nothing, there's nothing added or taken away from it or anything like that. So I am considering this a legit for this article. Okay. If you can find something else, that's totally fine. I personally could not. So if you could find something, please let me know. We do not use LDS sources. So Joseph Smith papers, FAIR, all of this kind of stuff we do not use on this channel. Okay. So unless you can find a legit source copy of this, I won't even consider it. Okay. All right. Recap. Section 1. Section 1 is in the article, right? They're broken down into sections. It has a few pages. This is only about a 7 or 8 page article here, okay? But it's like impactful, very impactful, okay? And it's cut into sections. It's cut into 3 sections, okay? So section 1 sets the stage, right? Tiffany begins by framing the story as remarkable and at times almost unbelievable, okay? So Tiffany writes, this is his words: the whole story, as related by those concerned, is remarkable in the extreme and would seem incredible were it not attested by the witnesses of the questioned veracity. Okay, I get such a charge out of the way these guys write. It's great. Okay, from the very beginning of this article, right? He uh, communicates skepticism, right? He's skeptical about the Mormon movement, right? And that's what this article is, right? But in the end of the article, stay tuned to the end because we're going to get into the legit words of Martin Harris here, okay? And so right now, he's just setting the stage, okay? So he acknowledges, right, in section 1, the claims that are being attested, right? But he doesn't assert for their truths, okay? He's being very fair-minded, right? You have to think of how he's writing this article, okay? He's documenting the human behavior, okay, as much as any supernatural or spiritual claim, right? You got to remember, he is coming at this from a scientific, supernatural point of view, okay? But there's no words in 1859 for this of what we would call this, right? So it's just automatically classed as the occult, okay? All right, so Tiffany introduces figures like Martin Harris, and he emphasizes their extraordinary commitment and unusual behaviors, right, to the spiritual, supernatural. All of his works are like this in Tiffany's Monthly. So once again, I want to express that Joel Tiffany is not picking on the Mormons here, Okay, he's not picking on anybody. He's writing a perspective, from a supernatural point of view. Okay, and he is interviewing Martin Harris. Okay, so he's setting the stage in part one. He introduces the figures of Martin Harris. He emphasizes their extraordinary commitment and unusual behaviors. Understand who Joel Tiffany is, guys, apostates. Uh, what he is writing, why he's writing about it, right? Because the statement is so important right there. The supernatural, right? He is documenting human behavior as much as any supernatural or spiritual claim. For example, Tiffany describes early followers of Mormonism engaging in the actions and statements that to an outside observer appear extreme and literal minded. Okay. He's all about the literal minded, right? These descriptions, right, they're just their background, right? He's giving you the background of these things, right? They set up the sense of a movement that is both extraordinary and deeply human, okay? And this is what Tiffany's article is expressing, right? He's expressing this stuff in his article as he's telling you the Mormon story, right? Okay, so at this stage in section one, Tiffany establishes the tone, right? We're recapping sections, videos 1 and 2. This is part 3, right? So right now we're recapping video 1. Okay. At this stage, Tiffany establishes the tone, right? He's careful in his reporting with an eye to the human peculiarity, right? Peculiarity. Okay, preparing the reader to consider not only what was claimed by the Mormons, but how it was claimed and by who. Okay, this is the expression Tiffany is making in his article, right? Okay, so let's go to video 2. So video 2, Tiffany begins the build-up, okay? He starts by showing contradictions, the oddities, and instances of extreme devotion more vividly. Okay, he gets into more detail, right? He writes in video number 2, in section 2 of the article. The whole story is so full of marvels and contradictions that a stranger might well hesitate to believe it. Yet, as I have heard it from those who were eyewitnesses, I can only report it as it was related to me. Okay, so this is showing his fairness, right? He's being like, down the road, right? I'm not embellishing. I'm not. This is what was told to me, and this is what I'm writing. Okay. Again, Tiffany is positioning himself as a reporter. Okay. You have to. There's certain things that you have to understand with these writers in the 1800s and the reasoning of their writings. See, in Mormon history, they just have you believe that these writings are just, straight up against the church. They hate us and they don't want us, they're bad and they're just talking trash. Well, no, these authors are trying to understand uh, Mormonism and the fanaticism and how people can, that's what Tiffany's coming from. That's the angle he's coming from. Is he's trying to understand the fanaticism, right? He's coming at it from a supernatural level, right? He's not an occultist. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. Joel Tiffany, do the research on Joel Tiffany of who he is. He is not, his writings are about occultic stuff, but he's more of a reporter. He's inquisitive. He's trying to understand, right? That's his angle, right? And so when you go to Mormon scholarship and the Mormon story about these authors, just all of them in general, right? They're just like, they hate the Mormons, they're anti-Mormon, no, none of these books are anti-Mormon. None of them. Most of them are trying to understand. A lot of them are just exposing, but none of them have hate. There's no hate or anti anything in any of these books or writings or anything, right? They're just telling his story. So let's keep going. We're in video 2. We got a lot to get to. Okay. So he's positioning himself as a reporter. Okay. Okay. He emphasizes the human drama in these accounts, apostate congregation. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Uh, these accounts, he's looking for the literal mindedness, right? The literal mindedness, the devotion, the sometimes strange behaviors, uh, and the intense social and religious dynamics is what he's looking at, right? That's what he's interested in, and that's what he's writing about. Section 2, video 2, also highlights the early schisms, right? And disagreements within the movement, right? We're talking about 1859 right now. Okay, contextually, historically speaking, what's taking place right now in the Mormon history? We're in 1859. When do the Brighamites go to Utah? Okay, around 47-ish, right? So this guy's talking to Martin Harris. So where is Martin Harris supposed to be? Do you understand me? Where is you know, put this stuff together, apostates. Okay. If Martin Harris is is supposed to be in XYZ location, how can he be doing this interview with this prominent scholar in a magazine, in a monthly magazine that's widely circulated, that's very credible? Come on, apostates, these dates matter. I keep telling you this stuff, right? Okay, so the whole thing is the build up to the big interview. Okay. Okay, this interview is wild, by the way. I've really got to tell you, this interview is wild. Okay, so um, section 2 also talks about, he also highlights the schisms and disagreements within the movement. Okay, these foreshadow Harris's later comments about the divisions and later the latter daily devils. I sincerely enjoy the way these people talk in these books, right? It's so creative. It is so creative. I love it, right? Okay, so finally, section 3. Let's get into it, apostates. The final 8-month awaited. I hope it's not a dud. Okay, that would really suck if it just you wait 8 months and then you're like wah wah wah. So you better like and subscribe now before I let you down, okay? And then click off. Once you subscribe, click off. Don't come back. All right, let's get into it. I need to drink water after that. In my mason jar of water. It's in the evening, so I'm not drinking coffee. Okay, let's go, congregation. Tiffany records Harris's statements carefully, giving us a unique view into the human side of these stories. Okay. One that Tiffany records as the first written account. That's the great thing about these stories, these old books, congregation, is where do these stories come from? We all know these stories. We all know the Mormon stories. Various whatever story, in your brain, right, about Joseph or Martin or, we all know these stories. But where do they come from? Who was the first person to write these stories? That's the cool thing about reading these books is you find that out. Okay. And we're going to get into another, on this channel, another first. Okay, so one of the first written accounts of Martin Harris losing the pen to pick his teeth, right, is in this article. Very first written account. So anything else written after this, okay, understand me, anything about this story that is written after August of 1859 is turning the story. If you really want to know what Martin Harris says about picking his teeth with the pen, just go straight to the source. This is the very first written account of this story, right? So if you want to know what Harry Potter says, you don't ask 35 other people what Harry Potter is about. I mean, you could, but you're going to get details and stuff left out. But so why not just go read Harry Potter and find out for yourself what it means and what it says? And isn't that a quick, easy solution? Just to shuffle through all of the mumbo jumbo that's out there and all of the scholars and all of the historians and all of the blah 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 and blah blah blah, and let's just go to the legit article. It's like 8 pages, and let's just read it for ourselves and just cut through all that stuff, right? That's what this channel is about. Okay, so he's losing a pen while he's picking his teeth. Okay, and he's asking Joseph to find it. Okay, so Tiffany writes, okay, now this is Martin Harris's words. Tiffany writes, Martin Harris's words. I was sitting at my own table picking my teeth and lost a pin. I sent for Joseph, who found it, as I had hoped. Now this goes on, okay, but this is the gist of the story right here. So let's break that story down, right? He's picking his teeth and lost a pin. Well, he never says he's picking a teeth and he dropped the pin that he was picking his teeth. He says, I was picking my teeth and lost a pin. So that could be anything. I'm picking my tooth. I'm jacking around with something and I drop it. Oh shit, man. I still got my toothpick though, right? So what does Mormon scholarship say? He's picking his teeth. He dropped the pin that he was picking his teeth with. It dropped it, they go all descriptive. It dropped in between a piece of wood and Martin Harris couldn't find it. Well, here's what it really says right here. This is it right here. Cut through all the scuttlebutt, cut through all the shit. This is what it legitimately says. Okay. This may seem trivial, even kind of humorous, right? But it illustrates Harris's literal mindedness. There's a bigger picture here. There's a bigger point here, right? Coming from Tiffany's point of view, remember. Keep it in perspective. Who is writing this particular story? Joel Tiffany. His perspective is this, okay? Okay, so the literal mindedness and the seriousness with which Martin Harris approaches small matters, okay? Tiffany presents it plainly, without judgment. He doesn't, there's nothing like that. But the story itself, right, reveals the human character. That's what Tiffany's going after here, right? This is not anti-Mormon apostate congregation. Do you understand? Okay, there is a clear, legitimate presentation perspective that Joel Tiffany, it's a clear approach. And in Mormon history, this guy's whitewashed totally. He's called an occultist, right? Okay. Do you understand what the real cult, the Mormon Church, if you want to call somebody an occultist, right? Tiffany is not an occultist. He's a scientist. Okay, but there's no words for what the type this supernatural kind of science in 1859, right? So Tiffany presents it plainly without judgment, but the story itself reveals the human characters and behaviors involved. Okay. Another key moment is the schism, right? The schism in the movement. Okay. Tiffany writes, okay, saying okay, hold on. Okay, yes, the schisms in the movement. Okay. So now here we're talking about Martin Harris. Okay, this is another quote from Martin Harris. Okay, you got to remember this entire thing is three sections. The first two sections are kind of the build up, the introduction, the build up, and then the third section is the interview itself. Okay, and the interview itself is most of the article. The part one and part two is not very long at all. They're just introductions and kind of a backstory, and then part three is the majority body of the story, right? Which is Martin Harris's own words. Okay. So this is what Martin Harris says about the schism, about the separation, right? You got to remember this is 1859. The church has just separated, right? The Brighamites, the Strangites, the Josephites, the all of these ites, okay, are the church is it's in a schism. Everybody's going every direction. Joseph died, right? So, these stories, congregation, how no successor was appointed, and Hiram had familial rights, and the schism. That's what Harris is talking about right now. Okay. The pretended church of the Latter-day Saints, this is Harris's own words. The pretended church of the Latter-day Saints are in reality Latter-day Devils, and myself and a very few others are the only genuine Mormons left. This is in 1859 apostates. Okay. Tiffany lets Harris's words speak for themselves. Okay. Okay, I got one more account for you, and this is going to blow your mind. So, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Uh, we're not monetized, all that kind of stuff. All right. Anyways, I don't even care about any of that stuff. Just read these books is really all I'm asking you to do. If you choose to subscribe to this channel for more of this kind of stuff, by all means, please do it. But we're not monetized, and we will never be monetized. So that's the only way you can support the channel is by subscribing and liking, sharing, watching the videos all the way through. But most importantly, I'm really more interested in reading these books. I have to be honest with you. So the subscription is a bonus for me. But if you read the book and tell your friend, that's even more important to me than subscribing. Okay. So let's keep going. Don't get me wrong. I do want you to subscribe, though. Understand? All right. Tiffany recounts an episode regarding the Book of Mormon project. Okay. Now, this is legit right here. This is a legit story. Now, I'm going to make you all feel really bad for a minute. Okay. My apologies, but this is the way these stories unfold sometimes, congregation. Okay. And I blame this on the church. This is the church's fault. Okay. And you will understand why as this story unfolds. Okay. So, Martin Harris is not a good guy. Okay. I want you to think of all of the episodes that you've ever heard about Martin Harris, all of the South Park, all of this kind of stuff, where Martin Harris's wife takes the 116 pages and throws them in the fire or loses them or whatever the story that you have been told or heard or whatever the case may be. And we all regard Martin Harris's wife as this great saint that almost saved the day, right? Okay. What were her consequences? Apostate congregation. What were the consequences for her for doing that? You got to remember, this is the 1800s. We're talking total frontier justice here. Okay. There's no laws. The women don't even have rights at this time. There's no women's rights, right? You're in the frontier, so you're kind of effed as a woman, right? So what happened to her, right? There's consequences. So we all look at her in this funny cartoon, like, yay, she saved the day. But let's get into it. Let's get into her story. Okay. He writes, Martin Harris, okay, this is Tiffany. He's writing now about Martin Harris. He says, Martin Harris, once compelled his wife to stand in the cold because she opposed his plans, and he regarded her remonstrances, however the hell you say that word, remonstrances, remonstrances. He regarded her monstrosities, as obstacles to the work which he deemed sacred. Okay, so there is actually a legitimate story to this. So here's where we connect literary dots, congregation. Okay, this is an 1859. Joel Tiffany's telling you about how Martin Harris made his wife stand out in the cold for works which he deemed sacred. Okay, so apostate congregation, what would you think that is? Bing, 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 bing. You're right. Okay, so what is the full quote? This quote comes from the 1834 edition, not the 77, because it's different in the 77 edition of Mormonism Unveiled. The 1834 edition of Mormonism Unveiled. If you are reading about the John D. Lee Confessions or the Mountain Meadow Massacre, you are in the wrong book. Okay. So Lucy Harris, right, her deposition to Eber D. Howe, okay, it's would be considered one of the affidavits in Eber D. Howe's book. Okay. It's dated November 29th, 1833. Okay. This is Lucy Harris's writings. This is her words. This is the original print of where this story comes from. Okay. Right. Remember, where did these stories come from? Mormonism Unveiled, dated, it's the 34 edition. It's a deposition affidavit in that book, dated November 29th, 1833. This is Lucy Harris's own words. Martin Harris, naturally quick in his temper, at different times, while I lived with him, he has whipped, kicked, and turned me out of the house. Once in his fits of rage, he struck me with the butt end of a whip, which I think had been used for driving oxen, and was about the size of my thumb. He beat me on the head 4 or 5 times, and the next day turned me out of doors twice, and beat me in a shameful manner. That's Lucy Harris's own words right there. So that story is what what Joel Tiffany is talking about in his 1859 book. Okay, do you see how you can follow these lines, right? You can unravel Mormon history through the dates. Follow the dates. Okay. So throughout all three sections, okay, Tiffany maintains a skeptical lens. Okay, he documents testimony without endorsing it, preserving the human and social dimensions of these events. Okay, you got to remember, why is he writing this? Okay, he's not bashing Mormonism. This is not a Mormon bashing article. Okay, Mormonism has all of us so ingrained in this is all anti-Mormon literature. There's nothing anti-Mormon about any of this stuff. Is what's anti-Mormon about it is the fact that they're telling you the truth. And the cult, the institution, does not want you to know that. So they do everything they can to keep you away from these books. They even come out with their own versions of this stuff and sell it in the Mormon bookstore. It's a cult, apostate congregation. That's how cults cult. They keep you in the cult. Okay? It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal to me. Okay? So, anyways, Tiffany is preserving the human and social dimensions of these LDS Mormon events. Okay? One that allows the reader, right? He's talking to the reader. Okay, when a lot of these works, they're all talking to the reader. They're like warning us. It's like future warnings, right? All of this works. They're future warnings, right? Like, you better stop this now. Like, no kidding, right? Okay. What do you think all of the secret society warnings are all about in George Washington's farewell address? Beware of secret societies, he says, and it's in big, bold letters, right? The whole anti-Masonic movement is all about the secret society of speculative masonry, right? Like this stuff does not evolve in a vacuum. This all comes from somewhere. There's a lineage to all of this. This doesn't just pop out of nowhere, right? Mormonism was not created in 3 days. Okay. All right. So this result is a detailed, critical, and compelling account of early Mormon history, apostate congregation. One that allows the reader to engage with the material on its own terms. You're reading this stuff and it's the way Tiffany writes this is he is allowing the reader to kind of make up their own mind, right? It's, and you have to remember, there's no words for these kind of like bias and, there's no words for this kind of stuff back then, right? So, and which in my mind lends even more credibility to these authors because they're doing this stuff without even really being told. There's no law. There's no like There's no laws against like today we have defamation laws, we have libel laws, we have and these guys pass all these tests. They're not defaming, there's no libel, they're just straight up writing these stories, right? So in today's world, these books would legitimately pass the muster, right? Legally speaking. But the cult, the church, the institution doesn't want you to know that, right? So this article, right? It's an article in a magazine, okay, Tiffany's Monthly, and I don't think I mentioned the name of the article in the magazine is called Mormonism 2. I know it's like very late in the game to say that, but it's called Mormonism 2. It's in Tiffany's Monthly. Mormonism 2 is the name of the article, and 2 is Roman numerals. Okay. I should have said that at the beginning. Sometimes I get carried away with these and I, you know, lose train of thought and stuff. All right. Anyways, back to this. We're almost done, congregation. Um, so try to understand. So Tiffany is trying to understand the people behind the movement, the people behind the Mormon movement. That's his approach, right? The people behind the movement that lived it. He wants firsthand accounts, people that lived the movement, the main players, Martin Harris, David Whitmer, Joseph Smith, Oliver Cowdery. These people, right? These are the main players. And Joel Tiffany gets an interview with one of those players. It's a great, great article. It is a great article. But within this article, you're going to hear other stuff. Okay. That's another cool thing with all of these books that we talk about on this channel, congregation, is there's so many first. This is where these stories first come from, are these old 1800s books, right? And then ask yourself, if you're thinking when you're in church this week and they're telling you some faithful story about Joseph or Emma or Brigham or Oliver Cowdery or how their faith was never turned or things of this sort. Ask yourself, where did those stories first originate from? And you can find it. You can legitimately find it. They're in these books. Okay, and all of these books are 100% considered anti-Mormon material. So why, apostate congregation, would the church be telling you a story from an anti-Masonic book or an anti-Mormon book? And they're telling you about this faithful story. Well, where did that story even come from? It came from an anti-Mormon book. That story legitimately comes from an anti-Masonic book or an anti-Mormon book. And they're on the pulpit, right? During a conference, telling you this story that is out of an anti-Mormon book. Am I relaying that to you? And everybody in that congregation right there, that the whatever you call it, right? The seating, they're all just like, oh yeah, I feel the spirit. I feel the spirit. And congregation, once you understand that the story that is so spiritual is from an anti-Mormon book, it puts an entirely different perspective on the way we see those people. You understand me? It's fascinating. This is Mormonism. Welcome, apostate congregation, to Mormonism. Oh, fucking A, man. I love it. All right. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We have so much more of this stuff. I mean, I can do this shit all day long, man. All day long. So Comment, like, and subscribe, share. We are never monetized, all these kinds of things. Let me know what you're interested. I know a lot of you, congregation, are reading these books. We talk about them, we converse about them. You write me, I reply. We converse about this stuff, and I find that so incredibly awesome and fascinating that you guys are showing that kind of interest, and you're legitimately reading these books. It's great. I love it. I cannot get enough of it. Okay. All right, congregation. In the words of the late great Solomon Southwick, the ashes of Morgan will rise again. And here we are, congregation. Here we are. The ashes of Morgan have risen. Okay. Here we are. Like and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you on the next go around. All right. We'll see you on the other side, congregation.